Every soul longs for a second chance, a moment of grace. This story carries that hope. If it stirs something in you, click like, leave a comment, and subscribe for more faith-filled journeys. The Closed Door. Part 1. Pride Before the Fall. The morning Boston air carried a crispness that signaled the beginning of fall, but Adam Mitchell barely noticed as he strode across the Harvard campus, his leather messenger bag thumping rhythmically against his hip. The early October sunshine glinted off the red brick buildings, and students hustled about with coffee cups and backpacks, their conversations creating a familiar academic hum. Adam moved with purpose, his tall frame cutting through the crowd with practiced indifference. At 23, he was already a rising star in the biochemistry department, something he never let anyone forget. His research on novel protein therapies had garnered attention from professors and peers alike, and he had grown accustomed to being the brightest mind in any room. "Hey, Adam," called a voice from behind. It was Sophia Chen, a fellow researcher in his lab. "Are you heading to Dr. Brennan's office? I heard the Whitmore Fellowship announcements are happening today." Adam slowed his pace just enough to let her catch up. "They are," he replied with a thin smile that didn't reach his eyes. "But it's hardly an announcement when we all know who's going to get it." Sophia raised an eyebrow. "A little confidence is good, but maybe don't count your chickens before they hatch. The competition is pretty fierce this year." "Competition?" Adam scoffed. "James is brilliant with theory, but can barely keep his cultures alive, and Priya's research is derivative at best." He adjusted the strap of his bag. "I've been working 18-hour days for the past year. My protein stabilization method is groundbreaking. Dr. Brennan practically told me the fellowship was mine last week." Sophia's expression softened with concern. "Just try to be prepared either way, okay?" "I don't need to prepare for disappointment," Adam replied coolly, checking his watch. "I've got to go. I want to be early." He left Sophia standing there, missing the look of worry that crossed her face. In Adam's mind, the Whitmore Fellowship, the most prestigious research grant offered to graduate students, providing 3 years of fully funded research and connections to the top laboratories in the country, was already his. He had calculated every variable except one, his own hubris. Dr. Helen Brennan's office was housed in the Westfield Science Building, a stately structure of brick and glass. Adam knocked on her door at precisely 2:55 p.m., 5 minutes before his scheduled appointment. "Come in," called a warm voice from inside. Dr. Brennan sat behind a large oak desk, her silver-rimmed glasses perched on the end of her nose, her gray hair cut in a practical bob. She was a legend in the field of biochemistry, known equally for her brilliant mind and her no-nonsense approach. "Adam, right on time," she said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. "Please, sit down." Adam settled into the chair, forcing himself to maintain an air of professional calm despite the excitement bubbling inside him. This was the moment he'd been working toward since his undergraduate days. "Thank you for seeing me, Dr. Brennan. I understand today is the day for the Whitmore Fellowship decisions." "It is," she replied, folding her hands on her desk. "And I wanted to speak with you personally about it." Adam nodded, allowing himself a small smile. Personal meetings were typically reserved for recipients, another confirmation that the fellowship was his. "Adam, you are unquestionably one of the most talented researchers I've encountered in my 30 years of teaching, Dr. Quote." Brennan began, taking off her glasses. "Your technical skills are exceptional, and your protein stabilization research shows remarkable promise." "Thank you," Adam said, sitting up a little straighter. "It means a lot coming from you." "However," she continued, her tone shifting subtly, "the Whitmore Fellowship isn't solely about technical brilliance." A small frown crossed Adam's face. "I'm not sure I understand." Dr. Brennan sighed. "The fellowship requires not just individual excellence, but the ability to collaborate, to lead, and to lift others up. In short, to embody the values that make scientific progress truly meaningful." The air in the room suddenly felt too thin. "Are you saying?" "The committee has decided to award this year's fellowship to Priya Sharma." The words hit Adam like a physical blow. Priya Sharma, the graduate student whose work he had dismissed just minutes ago. "There must be some mistake," he said, his voice suddenly tight. My research metrics are superior in every measurable way, my citation index alone. This isn't about metrics, Adam, Dr. Brennan interrupted gently. Priya's research into affordable drug delivery systems for developing countries demonstrates exactly the kind of innovative thinking and humanitarian focus the Whitmore stands for. Furthermore, she's shown exceptional leadership in mentoring younger students and fostering a collaborative environment in the lab. And I haven't? Adam's voice had an edge now. Dr. Brennan regarded him for a long moment. Adam, in the past year, how many times have you helped your fellow researchers? How often have you shared your knowledge rather than guarded it? 3 graduate students have asked to be reassigned from your team, citing your difficult personality. Because they couldn't keep up, Adam retorted, heat rising to his face. No, Dr. Brennan said firmly, because you couldn't bring yourself to lift them up. Science isn't a solitary pursuit, Adam. The greatest breakthroughs happen when brilliant minds work together, not when they work in isolation. Adam sat in stunned silence, the reality of what was happening slowly sinking in. His fellowship was gone. I hope you'll take this as an opportunity for growth, Dr. Brennan said, her voice softening. Your potential is extraordinary, but potential alone isn't enough. Adam rose from his seat, his movements stiff and mechanical. Thank you for your time, Dr. Brennan, he said coldly, then turned and walked out, closing the door behind him with deliberate control. It was only when he reached the empty stairwell that he allowed the mask to slip, his face contorting with rage and disbelief. How could they have chosen Priya over him? It was incomprehensible, unforgivable. Outside, the beautiful autumn day continued unaware of his internal turmoil. Students laughed and talked. Professors hurried to classes, and somewhere across campus, Priya Sharma was probably receiving the news that would change her life, the news that should have been his. Adam walked without direction, his mind a storm of bitter thoughts. Hours passed, and the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the city streets. He found himself in an unfamiliar neighborhood, away from the manicured lawns of Harvard, among old brownstones and small neighborhood shops. Rain began to fall, first a gentle mist, then a steady downpour that soaked through his light jacket. Adam looked up, searching for shelter, and saw an old stone building with a weathered wooden door standing slightly ajar. Without thinking, he pushed it open and stepped inside. Part 2. The Abandoned Sanctuary. The heavy door creaked shut behind Adam, sealing out the sound of rainfall. He stood dripping on worn stone tiles, his eyes adjusting to the dim interior. As his vision cleared, he realized he had wandered into an old church, or what remained of one. The space was cavernous and silent. Dust motes danced in the thin beams of fading daylight that filtered through stained glass windows high above. Most of the pews had been removed, leaving only a few scattered near the front. The altar was bare except for a simple wooden cross, and cobwebs hung from the rafters like delicate veils. It was clearly no longer in regular use, yet it hadn't been completely abandoned either. There were signs of minimal upkeep. The floor, though worn, was swept. A few electric bulbs provided modest lighting, and someone had placed fresh flowers beside the cross. Adam moved forward, his footsteps echoing in the emptiness. He was not religious, had always prided himself on his scientific rationalism, but something about the quiet dignity of the space spoke to him in his current state of turmoil. "Hello?" he called out, his voice bouncing off the stone walls. "Is anyone here?" No answer came. He was alone. Adam sank into one of the remaining pews, the wood creaking beneath his weight. The events of the day crashed over him in waves. The Whitmore Fellowship, the cornerstone of his career plans, the validation he had been so certain was his due gone, given to Priya Sharma, whose work he had consistently belittled. The thought made his stomach clench with humiliation and anger. "It's not fair," he whispered to the empty church, his voice brittle with emotion. As if in response, a distant roll of thunder rumbled beyond the walls. Adam closed his eyes, allowing himself to feel the full weight of his disappointment. He had built his entire identity around being the best, the smartest, the most innovative, the destined for greatness biochemist who would revolutionize his field. Without that, who was he? When he opened his eyes again, they fell on a small book lying on the pew beside him. Curious, he picked it up. It was worn, its leather cover soft with age and use. Gold lettering, faded but still legible, spelled out the title, A Guide to Humble Prayer. Adam almost laughed out loud at the irony. Humble was the last word anyone would use to describe him. He had been told as much by professors, classmates, even the few friends who had drifted away over the years. He had always dismissed such criticism as jealousy or mediocrity, trying to bring down excellence. Yet, here he sat, excellence rejected, holding a book about humility. With nothing better to do while waiting out the storm, Adam opened the book. Its pages were thin and slightly yellowed, filled with handwritten notes in the margins editions from readers over many years. He began to read. True prayer begins with the recognition that we are not the center of the universe. It is the acknowledgement that our greatest achievements are but small offerings in the grand tapestry of existence. To pray humbly is to understand that our worth is not measured by accolades or accomplishments, but by the depth of our compassion and the sincerity of our service to others. Adam snorted softly. It sounded like something Dr. Brennan might say. He turned the page. Exercise 1. Reflect upon a moment when pride preceded a fall in your life. What lesson lay waiting to be learned? The words struck uncomfortably close to home. Adam was about to close the book when a margin note caught his eye. In faded blue ink, someone had written, "Pride blinds us to the gifts of others and the flaws in ourselves." He stared at the handwritten words for a long moment. A memory surfaced Sophia's concerned face as he dismissed their colleagues, the hurt in a lab assistant's eyes when he had harshly criticized their technique, Dr. Teteray, Brennan's disappointed expression as she delivered the news about the fellowship. For the first time, a sliver of doubt penetrated the armor of his certainty. What if he had been wrong? Not about his research abilities, but about everything else that mattered. The thought was so alien, so contrary to the narrative he had constructed about himself, that it felt physically painful to consider. Yet, sitting alone in an abandoned church with rain drumming on the ancient roof, Adam found himself unable to escape it. He continued reading, moving through chapters on listening, gratitude, and service. Time seemed to stand still as the words on the pages began to illuminate corners of his character he had deliberately left unexplored. Outside, the storm intensified, but Adam barely noticed, absorbed in his unexpected encounter with self-reflection. A soft cough broke his concentration. Adam looked up to see an elderly man standing at the end of the pew, leaning slightly on a worn wooden cane. He wore simple, close khaki pants, a blue button-down shirt, and a gray cardigan and regarded Adam with kind, weathered eyes. "I'm sorry," Adam said, startled by the man's silent approach. "I didn't mean to intrude. The rain." "No intrusion at all," the man replied, his voice gentle with a slight southern accent. "This old place has been sheltering souls from storms for over a century. I'm Walter. I look after St. Michael's what's left of it anyway." "Adam," he replied, awkwardly holding up the book, "I found this. I hope it's okay that I was reading it." Walter's face creased into a smile. "That's what it's there for." He gestured to the space beside Adam. "May I?" Adam nodded, and Walter eased himself down onto the pew with a soft groan. "Nasty weather out there," Walter observed, looking toward the windows where rain lashed against the colored glass. "Yeah," Adam agreed, still holding the book. "I got caught in it. I'm not even sure where I am, to be honest." Sometimes being lost is the first step to being found, Walter said, his eyes twinkling. "Forgive an old man his platitudes. Comes with the territory of spending too much time alone in a church." Despite himself, Adam smiled. "Do you work here? I thought this place was abandoned." "Not abandoned, just waiting," Walter replied. "The congregation dwindled over the years. We couldn't afford the upkeep, so regular services moved to our sister church across town, but I couldn't bear to see it locked up entirely. So I come by, keep it clean, make sure it's still here for moments like this, when someone needs a quiet place to think." Adam looked down at the book in his hands. "I've been doing a lot of thinking today." "That book has a way of encouraging it," Walter said knowingly. "Found it helpful?" Adam hesitated, then admitted, "It's challenging some ideas I've had about myself. Not exactly comfortable reading." "The best kind rarely is," Walter replied. He studied Adam's face for a moment, Want to talk about what brought you here today? Besides the rain, that is. Under normal circumstances, Adam would have deflected the question. He didn't share his problems, especially not with strangers. But something about the quiet church, the thoughtful book, and Walter's unassuming presence broke through his usual defenses. "I lost something today," he said slowly. "Something I thought I deserved, something I was counting on." "Ah," Walter nodded. "And it feels like the world has tilted sideways." "Exactly," Adam said, surprised by the apt description. "I've always been successful, the best at what I do. Today was the first time that wasn't enough." "And what is it that you do, Adam?" "I'm a biochemical researcher at Harvard. My work focuses on protein stabilization for therapeutic applications." The words came out automatically, the practiced introduction he'd given countless times at conferences and networking events. "Sounds important," Walter said. "It is," Adam replied, then caught himself. "At least I thought it was. Now I'm not sure if anything I've done matters at all." Walter was quiet for a moment, his weathered hands resting on the handle of his cane. "You know, I used to be a doctor, practiced medicine for 43 years before retiring. Spent most of my career thinking the work, the surgeries, the diagnoses, the treatments was what mattered most." Adam looked at him with renewed interest. "And it wasn't?" "Oh, the work mattered," Walter said. "But what I learned, too late for my liking, was that how we do our work matters just as much as what we achieve. The connections we make, the way we treat people along the way, that's what lingers long after our accomplishments are footnotes in someone else's research." The words hit Adam with surprising force, echoing Dr. Brennan's assessment of why he had been passed over for the fellowship. He stared down at the book, its title mocking him gently. "I don't know how to be humble," he admitted quietly. "I've spent my whole life being the best." "Being humble doesn't mean thinking less of yourself," Walter said, his voice thoughtful. "It means thinking of yourself less. There's a difference." The rain had begun to slacken, and the last rays of daylight were fading from the stained glass windows. Walter slowly stood, reaching for his cane. "The church is always open if you need a place to think," he said, "and that book consider it borrowed for as long as you need it." Adam looked up, surprised by the offer. "Really? Don't you need it back?" Walter smiled. "It has a way of finding its way back here eventually, just like the people who need it most have a way of finding it." With a nod of farewell, Walter made his way down the aisle and disappeared through a small side door, leaving Adam alone once again with his thoughts and the curious book that seemed to have been waiting for him. As the rain finally stopped and darkness settled over the church, Adam slipped the book into his bag and stepped back out into the wet Boston streets, heading home with a mind full of questions he had never thought to ask before. Part 3. The Slow Transformation. The following weeks unfolded in a blur of academic obligations and private turmoil. Adam went through the motions of his research and teaching assistantship, but his heart wasn't in it. The loss of the Whitmore Fellowship hung over him like a persistent shadow, coloring every interaction, every task. What made it worse was seeing Priya in the department hallways, her face glowing with the particular radiance that comes from dreams realized. Faculty members stopped to congratulate her, and even students who had never spoken to her before now orbited her like planets around a sun. Adam avoided her when possible, taking different routes through the science building and timing his lab work for hours when she was unlikely to be there. It wasn't just jealousy, though that burned hot enough. It was shame. Every time he saw her, Brennan's words echoed in his mind. She's shown exceptional leadership in mentoring younger students and fostering a collaborative environment. In quiet moments between experiments and lectures, Adam found himself returning to the little book he'd taken from the church. A guide to humble prayer had become a strange companion, challenging and confronting him with each page he turned. Exercise 7. Make a list of 10 people who have helped you reach where you are today. Consider how your achievements are built upon their guidance, support, and wisdom. Adam had stared at the blank page of his notebook for a long time before reluctantly beginning to write. His undergraduate advisor, Dr. Chen, who had first recognized his talent for biochemistry. The lab technician, Mario, who had patiently taught him techniques that textbooks couldn't adequately explain. His roommate from freshman year, who had dragged him to office hours when he was too proud to ask for help. The list grew, surprising him with its length. By the time he finished, he had written not 10, but 23 names. Looking at them, Adam felt an unfamiliar tightness in his throat. None of these people had ever appeared in his narratives about his success. In his telling, he had always been the lone genius, forging his path through sheer brilliance and determination. Yet here was evidence to the contrary, written in his own hand. Nearly 2 weeks after his visit to St. Michael's, Adam found himself drawn back to the old church. It was a clear Sunday afternoon, unseasonably warm for late October. This time, he approached deliberately, not driven by rain or despair, but by a growing curiosity. The church looked different in the full light of day. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass, painting the stone floor with kaleidoscope patterns. A few votive candles flickered near the altar, and fresh flowers had replaced the ones he'd seen on his first visit. Walter was there, carefully dusting the altar with a soft cloth. He looked up as Adam's footsteps echoed in the space, recognition, and what might have been pleasure crossing his face. "Adam," he said, setting down his cloth, "good to see you again." "Hi, Walter," Adam replied, feeling strangely shy. "I hope it's okay that I came back." "Of course," Walter said, gesturing around the empty church. "Not exactly turning people away, are we?" Adam smiled despite himself. "I brought the book back," he said, reaching into his bag. "I've finished it. Well, read it at least. I'm not sure I've finished with what it has to teach." Walter nodded, accepting the worn volume. "Most people haven't, even after decades. Did you find anything useful in it?" "I think so," Adam said slowly. "It's made me look at things differently." "Different how?" Adam hesitated, organizing his thoughts. "I always saw my success as something I created entirely on my own, but I'm starting to realize how many people contributed to how many still do. And I've never really acknowledged that." Walter's eyes crinkled with approval. "That's a significant insight." "But I don't know what to do with it," Adam admitted. "Knowing I've been ungrateful, even arrogant, doesn't change the fact that I lost something important, or that I don't know how to move forward from here." Walter considered this, then gestured to a small side chapel. "Let's sit for a bit. My old knees aren't what they used to be." They settled onto a bench in the chapel, where a small stained glass window depicted a figure helping another to stand. "You know," Walter began, "when I was a young doctor, I had a placenta brilliant violinist with the Boston Symphony Orchestra. Cancer had taken her ability to play, and she was angry at the world, at God, at me, for not being able to save her career." Adam listened, drawn into the story. For months, she refused to see anyone but medical staff. Then, one day, a young nurse brought her 7-year-old daughter to work a scheduling emergency. The little girl wandered into the violinist's room and asked her what the calluses on her fingers were from. Instead of sending her away, the violinist began to explain music to her. Walter smiled at the memory. A week later, she asked for a violin to play, but to teach. By the time she left us, she had started a small music program for the children in the pediatric ward. She never played professionally again, but she found a new purpose that brought her immense joy. "Are you saying I should give up my research?" Adam asked, confused. "Not at all," Walter replied. "I'm saying that sometimes what feels like a closed door is actually an invitation to look around and see other doors you've been ignoring. Your research is important, but perhaps there are aspects of your work or yourself that you haven't fully explored." Adam thought about this, remembering Dr. Brennan's criticism about his failure to collaborate or mentor others. "I've never been good at working with people," he admitted. "I get impatient when others don't understand things as quickly as I do." "Yet you came back here to talk to an old man," Walter observed with a gentle smile. "That suggests you might have more capacity for connection than you give yourself credit for." The observation caught Adam off guard. It was true he had sought out Walter's company and wisdom, something the old Adam would never have done. "Maybe," he conceded, "but I don't know how to change years of habits, or if people would even believe I was trying to change." "Change doesn't happen overnight," Walter said. "And it doesn't need an audience to be real. It starts with small choices, made consistently, often when no one is watching." They talked for another hour, Walter sharing stories from his long career in medicine, Adam gradually opening up about his research and the competitive academic environment. As the afternoon light began to fade, Adam felt a lightness he hadn't experienced since before the fellowship announcement, perhaps longer. "I should get going," he said, finally, "but thank you, Walter, for listening and for the book." "Anytime," Walter replied. "And Adam, that book belongs to this church, but its wisdom belongs to whoever needs it. Feel free to come back to both whenever you'd like." Adam nodded, grateful for the invitation. As he walked back to his apartment, he felt the first stirrings of something new taking root in his heart, not quite hope, but perhaps its precursor, possibility. The next morning, Adam arrived at the lab earlier than usual. He had spent much of the night thinking about Walter's words and the lessons from the little book. Small choices, made consistently. He could start there. As he organized his workstation, he noticed James, the same colleague whose theoretical work he had dismissed to Sophia, struggling with a centrifuge calibration. The old Adam would have either ignored him or made a cutting remark about basic lab skills. Instead, he took a deep breath and walked over. "Need a hand?" he offered, his voice carefully neutral. "That model can be tricky." James looked up, surprise evident on his face. Yeah, actually, it keeps giving me an error code, but I've checked all the usual suspects." Adam examined the machine. "It might be the rotor lock. Here, let me show you a trick I learned." For the next 10 minutes, Adam walked James through a troubleshooting process, explaining each step patiently. When they finally got the centrifuge working, James's relief was palpable. "Thanks, Adam," he said. "Seriously, you just saved me hours of frustration." "No problem," Adam replied, and was surprised to find he meant it. There was a satisfaction in helping that he hadn't expected, a small but genuine warmth. As the weeks passed, Adam continued making these small choices. He stayed late to help a first-year graduate student understand protein folding concepts. He began leaving detailed notes on shared equipment to save others time. He stopped interrupting during lab meetings and started really listening to his colleagues' ideas. None of these actions erased the sting of losing the Whitmore Fellowship. That pain remained, a persistent ache that flared whenever he saw Priya or caught glimpses of the special seminars and meetings she was now invited to attend. But alongside the pain, something else was growing, a different kind of satisfaction that came not from recognition, but from connection. Adam continued visiting St. Michael's, sometimes to talk with Walter, sometimes just to sit in the quiet and reflect. He began working through the exercises in A Guide to Humble Prayer more seriously, writing his reflections in a journal. 3 months after his first visit to the church, Adam made what felt like his biggest step yet. After a department seminar, he approached Priya, who was gathering her notes at the podium. "Hey," he said, his heart pounding uncomfortably. "I just wanted to say that your presentation was really insightful. The way you're approaching the delivery system problem, it's innovative." Priya looked at him with understandable wariness. Their interactions since the fellowship announcement had been minimal and strained. "Thanks, Adam," she said carefully. I've been following your published updates," he continued, "and I had a thought about the stability issues you mentioned with the protein capsule in high-temperature environments. If you're interested, I might have some insights from my own research that could help." The surprise on Priya's face was evident, but so was her academic curiosity. "Really? That would actually be incredibly helpful. The degradation rate is still our biggest hurdle." "I have some time tomorrow afternoon if you want to discuss it," Adam offered. "That would be great," Priya said, her initial caution giving way to genuine enthusiasm. "How about 2 p.m. in the conference room?" "Perfect," Adam agreed. As he walked away, he felt a curious mixture of emotions. There was still a whisper of the old jealousy, but it was overshadowed by something more powerful, the realization that his research, which he had guarded so jealously, might actually help solve a problem that mattered. And in doing so, it might matter more than it ever had when it was his alone. Part 4. The Unexpected Door. Spring arrived in Boston with its usual capriciousness, warm, sunny days followed by sudden cold snaps that sent cherry blossoms falling like snow. For Adam, the changing season mirrored his own internal shifts, sometimes dramatic, sometimes subtle, but undeniably real. His collaboration with Priya had started tentatively but had blossomed into a genuine partnership. His protein stabilization methods, when applied to her drug delivery systems, had solved critical problems that had been hampering her progress. Together, they had submitted a paper to the Journal of Biomedical Engineering that was generating significant buzz in pre-publication reviews. More surprising than the professional success, however, was the change in Adam's daily experience of his work. The lab, once merely a place where he demonstrated his superiority, had become a community. He knew about James's struggle to balance research with caring for his elderly mother. He celebrated when Sophia received recognition for her innovative teaching methods. He felt genuine pride when a first-year student he had mentored mastered a difficult technique. These connections had not come easily. There had been plenty of awkward moments, skeptical looks, and tentative responses to his overtures. Years of arrogance had created a reputation that couldn't be undone in days or even months. But slowly, consistently, his small choices had begun to reshape how others saw him and, more importantly, how he saw himself. On a bright April morning, Adam received an email that made his heart skip. Dr. Brennan wanted to see him in her office that afternoon. His first instinct was anxiety. Had he done something wrong? Was his research being questioned? But he took a deep breath, remembering the practices he had been cultivating, and decided not to assume the worst. At 3 p.m., he knocked on Dr. Brennan's familiar office door. "Come in, Adam," she called. As he entered, he was surprised to find not just Dr. Brennan, but also Dr. Whitmore himself, the elderly founder of the fellowship that had changed the course of Adam's academic career. Dr. Whitmore was a legend in the field, rarely seen on campus these days due to his advanced age and semi-retirement. "Adam, thank you for coming," Dr. Brennan said, gesturing to a chair. "I believe you know Dr. Whitmore by reputation, if not personally." "It's an honor to meet you, sir," Adam said, extending his hand to the distinguished older gentleman. Dr. Whitmore's handshake was firm despite his years. "Likewise, young man, I've been hearing quite a bit about you lately." Adam glanced at Dr. Brennan, puzzled. "Please sit," she said. Once Adam was settled, she continued, "I've asked you here because Dr. Whitmore and I have been discussing a new initiative, and your name came up repeatedly in our conversations." "Mine?" Adam couldn't hide his surprise. Dr. Brennan smiled. "Yes, over the past 6 months, I've observed a remarkable transformation in your approach to your work and your colleagues. Your collaboration with Priya Sharma has produced exceptionally promising results, and the mentoring program you've informally started with the first-year students has been noticed and appreciated." Adam felt a flush of pride, different from the self-aggrandizing feeling he had once chased. This was quieter, warmer, centered not in his achievements alone, but in what they meant for others. "Dr. Whitmore," Dr. Brennan continued, "has been interested in expanding the impact of his philanthropy. In addition to the individual fellowship, he's considering funding a community research initiative that would bring together scientists from different specialties to address healthcare challenges in underserved communities." Dr. Whitmore leaned forward, his keen eyes fixed on Adam. "Helen tells me that your protein stabilization methods, combined with Miss Plant Sharma's delivery systems, could revolutionize vaccine distribution in regions without reliable cold chain infrastructure. Is that accurate?" Adam nodded carefully. "Yes. Our preliminary results suggest that proteins treated with our method can remain stable at much higher temperatures for extended periods. It could potentially eliminate the need for refrigeration for certain vaccines and treatments." "And what would that mean for global health?" Dr. Whitmore pressed. Adam thought about it seriously. 6 months ago, he might have focused solely on the scientific achievement, the publications, the acclaim. Now, his mind went first to the implications. It would mean that life-saving medications could reach people who currently have no access to them. He said, "Children in remote villages, refugee camps, areas with unreliable electricity, they could receive vaccines that are currently unavailable to them because of logistical constraints." Dr. Whitmore nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Precisely. And that, young man, is why I'm interested in funding a 3-year community research initiative focused on developing and implementing these technologies with you and Ms. Sharma as co-leads." Adam stared at him, momentarily speechless. Co-leads of a major research initiative? It was an opportunity larger than the individual fellowship he had coveted, and lost an opportunity not just for personal advancement, but for genuine impact. I don't know what to say, he managed finally. Say you'll consider it, Dr. Brennan suggested. Talk with Priya. Think about what you could accomplish together with proper funding and institutional support. And a team, Dr. Whitmore added. You'd be building and leading a team of researchers from multiple disciplines. It's not a solo endeavor. 6 months ago, that last point might have been a deterrent. Now, it was an exciting prospect, the chance to bring together diverse perspectives, to see what could be accomplished through true collaboration. I would be honored, Adam said sincerely, and I know Priya would be as well. Thank you for this opportunity. After discussing some preliminary details, Adam left the meeting in a state of dazed elation. As he walked across campus, his phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. Just heard the news from Dr. B. So proud of you, Adam. You've earned this not just with your brilliant brain, but with your growing heart. Celebration dinner tonight? Adam smiled, typing back a quick affirmative. Then, on impulse, he changed direction, heading not toward his apartment but toward the neighborhood where St. Michael's stood. The church was quiet as always, but today bright spring sunlight filled the space, bringing the stained glass windows to vibrant life. Walter was arranging flowers near the altar and turned at the sound of Adam's footsteps. Adam, he said warmly, it's been a couple of weeks. How are you? Good, Adam replied, the word inadequate for the mix of emotions he was feeling. Really good, actually. I wanted to thank you. Walter raised an eyebrow. For what? For being here that day, for letting me find that book, for listening, for… Adam gestured vaguely, searching for words. For helping me see that a closed door isn't the end of the story. Understanding dawned on Walter's face. Something good has happened. Yes, Adam said, and proceeded to tell Walter about the meeting with Dr. Brennan and Dr. Brennan. Whitmore, the research initiative, and what it could mean not just for his career, but for healthcare access across the world. Walter listened attentively, his weathered face breaking into a smile as Adam described the potential impact of the work. That's wonderful news, Walter said when Adam had finished. You must be very proud. I am, Adam admitted, but it's different from before. When I was chasing the Whitmore Fellowship, it was all about me achievement, my recognition. This feels bigger than that, and somehow that makes it mean more. Walter nodded, understanding in his eyes. When we let go of seeing our work as a monument to ourselves, we often find it becomes more meaningful, not less. They walked together toward the small side chapel where they had talked months before. The spring light caught the stained glass window depicting the figure helping another to stand, transforming the simple image into something luminous and profound. You know, Walter said thoughtfully, in my medical practice, I saw countless patients faced with doors that closed on their dream athletes who couldn't run again, musicians who lost dexterity, teachers who lost their voices. The ones who found their way to joy again weren't those who kept banging on the closed door demanding it open. They were the ones who, with time and often with pain, turned to see what other doors stood waiting. He gestured to the window. That's the story this window tells. It's not just about one person helping another. It's about the moment of truly seeing that help is possible, that connection changes everything, that we are never as alone in our struggles as we believe. Adam looked at the window with new eyes. In the shifting light, the figures seemed to move, their posture reflecting not just assistance but mutual transformation. I have something for you, Walter said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small, worn key on a simple cord. This is the side door key to St. Michael's. Not many people have one, but I'd like you to. Adam stared at the key, touched by the gesture. I don't understand. Why? Because places of reflection are hard to find in this busy world, Walter replied. And because I've seen how this old church has been part of your journey, it's here whenever you need it, early morning, late night, doesn't matter. Hesitantly, Adam accepted the key, its metal warm from Walter's pocket. Thank you. I'll take good care of it. I know you will, Walter said with a smile. Now, tell me more about this research. How soon before it could reach the people who need it most? Part 5. Opening New Doors. The next 2 years unfolded with an intensity and purpose that transformed not just Adam's career, but his entire understanding of what meaningful work could be. The Community Health Innovation Initiative, as they had named it, had grown beyond anyone's initial expectations. What had begun as a collaboration between Adam and Priya had expanded to include researchers from public health, engineering, logistics, and even anthropology, a genuinely interdisciplinary team united by a common goal. Their primary achievement, a heat-stable vaccine delivery system using Adam's protein stabilization method and Priya's innovative capsules, had progressed from laboratory testing to field trials in rural communities in Ecuador and Tanzania. On a crisp autumn day, almost exactly 2 years after his first meeting with Dr. Whitmore, Adam sat in his office reviewing data from the latest field reports. The results were promising. Vaccines had maintained their efficacy despite being transported through regions with temperatures regularly exceeding 100 F, with no refrigeration required. A knock at his door pulled his attention away from the screen. "Come in," he called. Sophia entered, her face bright with excitement. The WHO representatives just arrived. They're in the conference room with Priya and Dr. Brennan. Adam felt a flutter of nerves. The World Health Organization's assessment of their technology would determine how quickly and widely it could be implemented globally. "Thanks, Sophia. I'll be right there." As she turned to leave, Sophia paused. "Adam, I just wanted to say, what you and Priya have built here, it's remarkable. Not just the technology, but the team, the whole approach. It's changing how people think about global health solutions." Adam smiled, genuinely touched. "Thanks, Sophia. That means a lot, especially coming from you." "Why especially from me?" she asked, curious. "Because you knew me before," he said simply. "You know how far I've come." Sophia's face softened with understanding. "We've all grown. That's what good science and good leadership does." With a quick nod, she disappeared down the hallway. Adam gathered his notes and presentation materials, taking a moment to center himself. He thought back to the arrogant young researcher who had strode into Dr. Place. Brennan's office expecting the Whitmore Fellowship as his due. How foreign that version of himself now seemed, how limited his vision had been. The conference room was already full when he arrived. Priya stood at the front, confidently walking the WHO representatives through their initial data. She caught Adam's eye as he entered and gave him a small, encouraging smile. Their working relationship had evolved into a true partnership, each respecting the other's strengths and complementing their weaknesses. Where Adam excelled at the molecular level details, Priya had an unparalleled ability to see the big picture and connect their work to real-world implementation. Together, they had accomplished more than either could have alone, a lesson Adam had once been too proud to learn. The meeting progressed smoothly, the WHO officials asking thoughtful questions that revealed they were taking the project seriously. When it was Adam's turn to present the technical specifics of the protein stabilization method, he found himself speaking not just about chemical bonds and molecular structures, but about the human impact, the children who would be protected, the communities that would benefit. "What impresses me most," said Dr. Yamamoto, the lead WHO representative, when the presentations concluded, "is how your team has approached this as both a scientific and a social challenge. You've worked directly with community health workers from the beginning, incorporating their insights into your design process. That's unfortunately rare in global health innovation. We learned early on that the best solutions come from genuine collaboration." Adam replied, catching Priya's approving nod. "Not just across scientific disciplines, but across cultures and perspectives." "Well, based on what we've seen today," Dr. Yamamoto continued, "I can tell you that the WHO is very interested in partnering to accelerate the development and distribution of this technology. We believe it could be a game changer for vaccine delivery in remote regions." The room erupted in excited murmurs. This was the validation they had been hoping for, the pathway to seeing their work make a real difference on a global scale. As the meeting broke up and people began to filter out, Dr. Brennan approached Adam, her expression warm with pride. "Remarkable work, Adam, truly remarkable." "Thank you," he said sincerely. "None of this would have happened without your insight 2 years ago." Dr. Brennan raised an eyebrow. "My insight?" "When you awarded the Whitmore Fellowship to Priya instead of me," Adam clarified. You were right. I wasn't ready then. I needed to learn lessons that had nothing to do with science and everything to do with being human." Dr. Brennan smiled. It's not often a professor gets to see such clear proof that a difficult decision was the right one. "I'm proud of you, Adam, not just for the brilliant work you're doing, but for the person you've become while doing it." Later that evening, as the lab quieted and the excitement of the day settled into a deep satisfaction, Adam found himself drawn once again to St. Michael's. He had used Walter's key many times over the past 2 years, finding in the old church a space for reflection that helped him maintain his evolving perspective. The church was empty when he arrived, which wasn't unusual. He lit a candle near the Altera ritual he had adopted without quite being able to explain why, and sat in his usual spot in the side chapel. The stained glass window that had once seemed merely decorative now felt like an old friend, its meaning deepening with each visit. "I thought I might find you here," came Walter's familiar voice from the doorway. Adam turned, smiling at the sight of his friend. Walter moved more slowly now, his reliance on his cane more pronounced, but his eyes remained as kind and perceptive as ever. "Big day," Adam said as Walter eased himself onto the bench beside him. "The WHO wants to partner with us. It means our work could reach millions of people years sooner than we hoped." "That's wonderful news," Walter said warmly. "Though I'm not surprised. You've poured your heart and mind into this work." "It's strange," Adam reflected. 2 years ago, all I wanted was recognition for myself. Now, what makes today meaningful isn't that people are impressed with mates, that children in places I'll never visit might live because of work I've been part of. Walter nodded, understanding. That's the paradox, isn't it? The less we make our work about ourselves, the more satisfying it becomes. They sat in comfortable silence for a few moments, watching as the fading daylight played across the colored glass. "I have news of my own," Walter said finally, his tone carefully measured. "I've been meaning to tell you for a while now." Something in his voice made Adam turn to study his face. "What is it?" "My doctors tell me I have perhaps 6 months," Walter said simply. "The cancer has spread too far for treatment to be effective." The words hit Adam with physical force. "Walter, no, there must be something." Walter raised a hand gently. "I've had 87 remarkable years, Adam. I've practiced medicine, loved deeply, seen the world change in ways both wonderful and terrible. I'm at peace with what comes next." Adam felt tears building behind his eyes. This man who had appeared in his life at precisely the moment he needed guidance had become one of his dearest friends. The thought of a world without Walter in it seemed wrong, impossible. "Does anyone else know?" he asked quietly. "A few," Walter replied. "The pastor at the sister church, my daughter in California, and now you." "I don't know what to say," Adam admitted, his voice thick with emotion. "You don't need to say anything," Walter assured him. "I'm telling you not to burden you, but because you've become important to me. Your journey has been a gift to witness in these later years of my life." Adam reached out impulsively and took Walter's weathered hand in his. "You changed everything for me. That day, when I stumbled in here, I was so lost, so angry. If you hadn't been here, if you hadn't shown me kindness—" "The door was open," Walter said simply. "You walked through it. The choice was yours." They talked for another hour as darkness fell completely, the church illuminated now only by the candle Adam had lit and the soft security lights near the entrance. Walter spoke of his life, his late wife, whom he still missed daily, his hopes for St. Michael's future. Adam shared stories from the lab, the field reports from Tanzania, his evolving relationship with his colleagues. When they finally parted, Adam embraced the older man, holding him perhaps a little too tightly, a little too long. "I'll see you soon," Walter promised. "I've still got some good days left." Adam nodded, unable to speak around the lump in his throat. Walking home through the quiet streets, Adam felt an odd mixture of grief and gratitude washing over him. Walter's news had cast a shadow over the triumph of the day, yet somehow the juxtaposition made both experiences more profound, the joy sharper, the sorrow more meaningful. Back in his apartment, unable to sleep, Adam pulled out his journal and began to write. Over the past 2 years, journaling had become an important practice for him, a way to process his thoughts and track his growth. Tonight, the words flowed urgently, a tribute to Walter, and a reflection on all he had learned since that rainy day when a closed door had led him to an unexpected sanctuary. The greatest paradox I've discovered is this: what appears to be failure can be the doorway to our most meaningful success if we have the courage to walk through it. 2 years ago, I thought losing the Whitmore Fellowship was the end of my dreams. Now I see it was only the beginning of something far greater than I could have imagined. As dawn broke over Boston, Adam finally set down his pen, exhausted but somehow lighter. In the soft morning light, he could see more clearly than ever how a single closed door had ultimately opened his life to possibilities he had never dreamed existed. Epilogue. Legacy. Autumn in Boston had always been Adam's favorite season, but this year, the familiar beauty of the changing leaves brought a bittersweet ache. It had been 3 months since Walter's peaceful passing, and Adam still found himself turning towards St. Plazen. Michael's whenever he needed to think through a challenge or celebrate a success, half expecting to find his friend there with his gentle wisdom and perceptive questions. Today was a particularly significant day, the official launch of the Global Vaccine Accessibility Project, a partnership between their research team, the WHO, and a coalition of nonprofit organizations. Their technology would be implemented in 12 countries across 3 continents, with potential to reach millions of children who had previously gone unvaccinated due to lack of reliable cold storage. The ceremony was being held in the Grand Hall of the Westfield Science Building, the same building where, 3 years earlier, Adam had received the news that had changed the course of his life. The irony wasn't lost on him as he stood at the back of the room, watching people fill the rows of chairs. "Nervous?" Priya asked, appearing beside him in a brilliant blue dress, her usual lab attire exchanged for something more formal for the occasion. "A little," Adam admitted. "You?" "Terrified," she said with a laugh. "But the good kind of terrified, the kind that means we're doing something that matters." Adam nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. "I wish Walter could be here," he said quietly. "He would have loved to see this." Priya squeezed his arm gently. "You told me once that he said our work wasn't just about what we achieve, but how we achieve it. I think he'd be proud of both." Before Adam could respond, Dr. Brennan approached, gesturing that it was time to begin. The ceremony itself was both grander and more emotional than Adam had anticipated. Representatives from each partner organization spoke about the impact the new technology would have. Researchers from the team explained the science in accessible terms, and Dr. Proplagation.erd.a Time. Whitmore, now quite frail but still sharp-minded, received a standing ovation for his vision and support. When it was Adam's turn to speak, he found himself departing from his prepared remarks. Looking out at the assembled crowd colleagues, students, health officials, journalists, she felt a sudden clarity about what really mattered. 3 years ago, he began, I thought I knew exactly what success looked like. It was individual achievement, recognition, being the best. I was wrong. What I've learned since then, what this project has taught all of you is that true success is collaborative, interconnected, and focused on impact rather than accolades. He paused, gathering his thoughts. There's a stained glass window in a church not far from here. It depicts one person helping another to stand. For years, I saw that image as simple charity strength aiding weakness. Now, I understand it differently. When we truly connect with others, when we collaborate in service of something greater than ourselves, we're all both helping and being helped. We're all both standing and being lifted. As he continued his speech, Adam caught sight of an elderly woman sitting in the back row, her silver hair styled in a familiar bob. It took him a moment to place her, and when he did, his heart gave a strange leap. It was Walter's daughter from California, whom he had met only once, at the memorial service. After the ceremony concluded and the crowd dispersed into smaller groups for the reception, Adam made his way to her. "Ms. Carter," he said, extending his hand. "I'm Adam Mitchell. It's so good to see you again, though unexpected." She smiled, taking his hand in both of hers. "Please, call me Eleanor. And yes, I imagine it is a surprise." I've been handling some of Dad's affairs here in Boston and saw the announcement about today's event in the paper. I remembered how often he mentioned you in our calls these last few years. Your father meant a great deal to me, Adam said sincerely. He changed my life. Eleanor's eyes crinkled in a way that painfully recalled Walter. He had a gift for that, but he always said it was a mutual exchange, that your friendship brought him great joy in his final years. They chatted for a few minutes about the ceremony and the project, until Eleanor mentioned she needed to leave for another appointment. Before I go, she said, reaching into her handbag, I have something for you. Dad left specific instructions that you should have this. She handed him a small package wrapped in simple brown paper. Adam accepted it with surprise. Thank you. No need to open it now. Eleanor said kindly, Dad thought you might want some privacy when you did. With a warm handshake and a promise to stay in touch, she departed, leaving Adam holding the unexpected gift. It wasn't until much later, after the reception had ended and the excited buzz of the day had settled, that Adam found himself alone in his office with Walter's package. He unwrapped it carefully, finding inside a small wooden box with a simple brass clasp. Opening it revealed two items, a folded letter and what appeared to be an old brass key, different from the one Walter had given him to St. Michael's side door. Adam unfolded the letter first, recognizing Walter's neat, doctor's handwriting. Dear Adam, if you're reading this, then I've moved on to whatever comes next in this great adventure. Don't grieve too much for me. I've had a full life and was ready for the journey's end. The key enclosed belongs to a safe deposit box at Cambridge Savings Bank on Massachusetts Avenue. In it, you'll find the deed to St. Michael's Church. Yes, the church is mini or was. I purchased it 15 years ago when the diocese was planning to sell it to developers. I couldn't bear to see that sacred space turned into condominiums or offices. Now it belongs to you, to use as you see fit. My only request is that it remain a place where lost souls can find guidance, where closed doors can lead to open ones, where the quiet still speaks to those willing to listen. Your friendship has been one of life's great unexpected gifts. I have watched you grow from a brilliant but isolated young man into someone who understands that our greatest achievements are measured not in accolades, but in connections made and lives touched. The work you're doing will save countless lives. But remember that sometimes the most important impact we have comes from the smallest gesture, a door left open on a rainy day, a kind word offered without agenda, a listening ear when one is most needed. With gratitude and affection, Walter. Adam read the letter twice, tears blurring his vision. The church Walter's church was now his responsibility. It was an overwhelming thought, yet somehow right. The place that had changed his life was now in his care. In the days that followed, as the Global Vaccine Accessibility Project moved from ceremonial launch to practical implementation, Adam found himself returning to St. Michael's with new eyes. No longer just a visitor seeking wisdom, he was now its caretaker, its steward. With the help of Eleanor and the pastor from the sister church, Adam established a small foundation to maintain the building and keep it open as a place of reflection and community. He continued Walter's practice of simple upkeep, fresh flowers by the altar, candles available for those who wanted them, the door unlocked during daylight hours. 6 months after Walter's passing, on a day when the first field reports were coming in from Tanzania showing dramatically increased vaccination rates in remote villages, Adam sat in the side chapel. Looking at the now familiar stained glass window, the evening light caught it perfectly, illuminating the figures in warm golden hues. As he studied the image, Adam noticed something he had never seen before. In the background of the window, partially obscured by the main figures, was a small detail, an open door barely visible, with light streaming through it. He smiled, understanding the message anew. Closed doors were often not endings, but redirections, guiding us toward openings we might otherwise have missed. His own closed door, the Lost Fellowship, had led him here, to work that mattered more deeply than he had ever imagined possible, to connections that had transformed not just his career but his heart. Rising from the bench, Adam moved toward the church entrance. Outside, Boston continued its bustling pace, people hurrying home from work or out to dinner, each carrying their own hopes and disappointments, their own closed and open doors. Adam turned back to look once more at the old stone building, solid and patient against the evening sky. Then, deliberately, he propped the heavy wooden door wide open before walking away, leaving it that way for whoever might need to find their way in.